I'm Parneet Jaggi, and in this lecture, which is the third in the series on Indo-Anglian writing, which we also call Indian writing in English now, where we traced the history of Indian writing very briefly, touching the nuances and evolution of the growth of this genre. In this video, we're going to be talking only about the influences and the technique of narration taken up in Indo-Anglian writing, especially in fiction. So we see chiefly what were the influences on Indo-Anglian writing in India. At the primary stage, we notice that the Indian writers were immensely impacted by the European masterpieces of Leo Tolstoy, Balzac, and Dostoevsky in English translations. There is a great impact of the novels of Romantics and early Victorians like Dickens, Thackeray on English writers, but then we also notice that they're not the blind imitators of the European models. We notice that at the same time, our writers in India, they try to establish their own tradition of fiction writing in accordance with the old Indian tradition of storytelling. Bankim Chandra Chatterjee and Raja Ram Mohan Roy lay the foundation for the first generation of novelists to jot down the rich heritage and social changes in India. And all the novelists, as we observe, that they followed them, accepting them as the role models and wrote accordingly. Although we see that the early novels were sketchy, domestic, and free from the political activities, as the novelists portray the rural and domestic life filled with superstitions and religious whims, with an equal emphasis on morals and social evils. Despite all this, we find that their creative efforts were poor. Then, when we look at the technique of narration of these Indo-Anglian writers, specifically fiction, we find that there was a drastic change in the technique of narration as compared to the Anglo-Indian writing, in which the technique was the third person, because those writers were just witnessing the life in India, imitating, copying, getting motivated, and writing their own ideas through their own words. But here in the Indo-Anglian fiction, the most prominent technique of narration was the first person narrative, and the central character of the hero is the narration of the novel. Now, this technique is seen in many novels, such as we have Raja Rao's The Serpent and the Rope, we have Manohar Malgaokar's The Princess, then we have Nayanthara Saigal's A Time to Be Happy, and K. Natarajan's The Chronicles of Kedaram. Then we have another important technique of narration, which is even now in contemporary fiction in India. It is being popularized through various novelists like we have Amish Tripathi and all these. That is the technique of myth. So the Indo-England fiction has imported the technique of the creative use of myth. And we see this first. Radha Krishna legend is a recurrent myth in Raja Rao's The Serpent and the Rope. There is also the use of myth in R.K. Narayan's novel, like in Man-Eater of Malgudi. In The Old Woman and the Cow, even Mulk Raj Anand uses the myth of Sita's fire ordeal as part of his technique. So Raja Rao has also created an Indian Sanskrit rhythm in the syntax of English. So this was how briefly we discussed how the techniques of narration and the inclusiveness of myth and the impacts of the European and British writers influenced the Indian writers, but still the Indian writing in English could sustain its own originality and could evolve out of those foreign impacts and influences to be completely original with its own ethos and native influence. So, this was my interpretation of the Indo-Anglian literature. This was the third lecture in the series. For more information, you can visit my channel and see the earlier lectures in this series. If you like these lectures, please like and comment on the videos. Thank you for now.